Well, hi there. Welcome to this, my second live stream. First of all, there looks like there's a few people watching, so I'd just like you to let me know if my sound is coming across properly. So if you can let me know in the chat, I'd be really grateful. But what I'm planning to do today is answer any questions that come in on the live chat. Then I'm also going to talk you through the reasons why I started my YouTube, and it all comes down to a trip that I had to Iceland in 2019. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some pictures and talk you through that trip a little bit later in the stream. So just looking at the live chat, it looks like Andrew's there at the moment, and he's asking me about mirrorless. But if you could just let me know whether you can hear me, Andrew. I hope that means I'm spot on with the sound, so that's great. So I will answer that question. I've mentioned in quite a few of my videos about my mirrorless camera, and I'm still not massively happy with the way that it performs, and it's more to do with the way it connects with my 200 to 500 millimeter lens. It really struggles to focus from a long distance to a short distance, and I just miss out on things. I really like the way that the mirrorless camera uses the EVF. That's great, but unfortunately it's just the speed of focus that I'm not happy with, and so if I know that I'm going out to take wildlife shots, I'll still use my D850 just because I prefer the way that it works. Let's have a look at what's going on. Yeah, I'm getting thumbs up again from Andrew, so thanks for that. So everything seems like it's going okay. If you are sitting watching, there are more people that are watching than are leaving comments. So do leave a comment for me, because one, it helps me to know that you're there, and two, it gives you the chance to leave me any comments, ask any questions that you want to, and it just makes the stream a little bit more engaging. I think that I've learned a little bit from my first live stream, so hopefully this one should go a little bit more smoothly. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat in case we get any spam that happened last time. It completely threw me when we got some spam comments, and I think I know how to deal with that a little bit better. But don't forget, if you are sitting there in the live chat, if you are sitting there watching, do leave a message down below in the live chat. Now, one thing I will mention early on, then I know I've got it out of the way, is my Teespring store. I just want to bring that up at the beginning. You'll probably see that I'm wearing one of my t-shirts at the moment that says, "Keep calm and enjoy your photography." It's one of my new designs that are in my Teespring store, so go and have a look at that. It really helps out the channel, and it makes sure that I can make future content like this. But as I always say, you can just do the same thing to support the channel by clicking like, subscribe, and sharing the video with other people. So let's get rid of that. I've done my merciless plugging. Welcome to everybody that's watching. Don't forget to leave your comments so I know you're there. Otherwise, I'm just talking to myself. So because I've not got any comments at the moment down in the chat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to talk about my trip to Iceland. Now, I put my YouTube journey, or the start of my YouTube journey, should I say, down to this trip to Iceland, because before I went, I was completely in a no man's land in photography. I hadn't really found something to sink my teeth into. I like a project or something to get better at. And when I came back from Iceland, that inspired me to start to take up landscape photography again. So that's what we're going to talk about at the moment. I'll keep an eye on the live chat as well in case we get any comments. If you do have any questions about any of the pictures or anything to do with Iceland, or anything at all that's completely unrelated, then do leave them down below in the chat. I'll try and keep my eye on it as we go through. But for now, let's just switch screen and let's go into this PowerPoint talk. Now, again, as I said in my last stream, I'm not a massive fan of PowerPoint talks, but it's just here for me to give you a little bit of indication about this trip that I had to Iceland. Now, it was in 2019. Most people, I think, will be fairly familiar with where Iceland is. It's way off the northwest coast of England. It takes about 2.5 hours to get there, and it's just over 1,000 miles away from the UK. When we got to Iceland, we landed in Reykjavik, and you can see from the map on the screen that we had a few places to visit. All the places that are circled were places that we actually stayed, and then the places that are starred are the places that we visited. So we mainly stayed along the south coast, and we went in February, so the weather was quite unpredictable. It's quite cold, and at some points it was quite scary, and I'll come on to that a little bit later in the talk. So we landed in Reykjavik, and straight away when we picked up the car, we were told that the road that we were planning to take to our first stop was closed. So we were faced with the choice of, do we stay in Reykjavik or do we find a different route? And we decided to take the coast route instead of the route that we'd planned. At the time, there was a lot of really bad weather. It was quite high winds, and it was coming in from the north towards the south. So we figured if we got underneath it and went to the south, we might be able to get to our location. So we set off. It was a fairly barren landscape, and really we were thinking more about getting to our location rather than taking photographs at that point, because the weather was closing in. But we did manage to get there to a place called Selfoss, which is along the coast from Reykjavik, and we were staying in a guest house that night, and we had a meal, so that was quite good. But really, it was a stop off before we went to our next location the following day. And we got up in the morning to set off on our first full day. We were going to the Hogsland guest house along the coast, about 130 miles. The first thing that we did, we thought, great idea, we'll have a little bit of a detour. And on the map, there's a little green circle, and we thought we would have a little drive around there before we set off on our journey to our final destination. Turned out that it wasn't really a very good idea, because the roads were like sheet ice. Even though the tyres had little studs in them, it was still very, very hairy. And the best thing we saw was this lighthouse, and we didn't even get out to take its photo because it wasn't that spectacular. So we carried on going, but we did find a waterfall, this waterfall just here, and it was quite interesting, difficult to get to, and quite hard to take a photograph of because of the amount of ice. And so a lot of the paths were actually fenced off, and there were quite a few tourists there. If anybody's been to Iceland before or has any particular stories to tell, do let me know. At the moment, the chat's gone very quiet. There are some viewers watching according to my screen, so don't just sit there in the without chatting. Don't be a lurker. Do leave me a comment, then I know you're there. Anything that you want to ask me about Iceland, do let me know, or any other questions, then it gives us a bit of engagement. But I'll carry on for the moment. Also that day, I got this picture, which is probably one of my favourite shots from the time that I was there. Just reading something that's come in on the chat. It's a comment about cameras, so I might talk about that in a little while. I'll keep an eye on that, Stephen. And I'll mention it in a little while. I'll just mention it now because I can deal with it quite quickly, Stephen. Stephen's asked a question about Micro Four Thirds, and really, I've got no experience of it. I've only, for the last 3 or 4 cameras, had full frame cameras, so I can't really give a very knowledgeable response to that question, because all the stills cameras that I've used have been full frame cameras. But as you quite rightly say, I'm sure they are better because they're lighter. So if you've got issues with carrying a heavy camera, I'm sure they are better. My vlogging camera does actually take good stills photographs, but it is a crop sensor. So as I was saying, this picture that's on the screen now is one of my favourite shots from Iceland. It was, as we were driving down the road, we saw a little group of ponies over onto one side of the road, and we decided we'd stop the car and get out and see if we could get any decent photographs of them. And they were very friendly. They didn't really mind us wandering around them. And this particular pony that is the big one on the screen, or the big photograph on the screen, I just casually followed for a little while because I saw him going off towards this stream, and I waited for the moment where the stream provided a really good leading line, balanced by the hill in the foreground, and just at the last minute I did a bit of a click and a wave, and the pony turned its head towards me, and I got this picture. So that is 100% natural, with no additions or things removed. It's exactly what I saw on the day, and I've got this shot printed downstairs in our dining room, so I'm really pleased with it. So then we carried on, and we got through Vic towards where we were going to stay, and we had a quick stop off at the beach, and it was quite amazing because if you know Iceland at all the beaches are black volcanic sand, and it makes for very striking photographs when there's snow on the beach as well, because you get this really sharp contrast. And this was very, very close to being an almost perfect shot. I didn't see it until it was too late. There are two people walking across the beach, and I just missed the moment where they would have been in the gap between the cliff and those pinnacles of rock, and I think that would have made an absolutely perfect shot. Just missed it because they were walking to the right, and it's always a case that you often miss shots in this kind of situation. It happens to me all the time, and you've probably heard me say in videos about how I've missed certain shots. Just got a comment there from James. Thank you, James. It's great to have you listening. Hope that that this is interesting to you. If you are sitting watching, don't forget, as I said earlier, let me know down below in the chat that you are there, so I can give you a little bit of a low, and so we can engage a little bit. And if you do have any questions, do leave those as well. So we got to the place where we were going to stay. We had a meal, and then we were ready for the following day, where we were going to Jökulsá. It's a very famous location in Iceland, sometimes known as the Ice Lagoon, because there's a large lake at the foot of a glacier, and then what happens is parts of the glacier break off into this lagoon, and form all of these little icebergs, so you can walk around the lake taking pictures like the one that's on the screen. And this particular shot here, I've cropped into a very, very narrow letterbox, because in front of me now I've got 3 monitors, and this image here is a panorama around all 3 monitors in front of me. So that's why I made this. I did take it as a panorama in the first place, but then I thought, oh, I know where I can use this on my monitor setup at home. But standing in this particular location was one of those awe-inspiring moments where you just are absolutely overwhelmed by the majesty of nature. I just had to stand there for 10 minutes and just be amazed by the sight that I was seeing. It was just so phenomenal to be there. If you've ever got the chance to go to Iceland at all, it is such a lovely place. I would definitely recommend doing it. Hayel, I'm going to pronounce that as Yell. Hope it's that's how I pronounce it. I've seen your comment there, Yal, about attracting birds. I'll address that after I've talked about my Iceland adventures. So I'll just make a note of it, then I won't forget your comment about attracting garden birds. So your Carlson, yeah, it was one of those amazing places that just is out of this world. And then also what happens is when the icebergs break off, they float out to sea and then come back onto the beach. And so the beach is then littered with icebergs like this. And we were there for the sunrise. So I went down onto the beach and got the sun rising behind this particular iceberg on the beach. And it was just magical. A few more shots of your Carlson, and a lot of people comment on just how blue some of these pieces of ice are, and it's all completely natural. I might have just tweaked the vibrance or the saturation ever so slightly, but it's pretty much what I saw. And this is the beach in a little bit more detail. It's known as Diamond Beach for obvious reasons. Trying to find a picture is very difficult, especially in the winter, because as you can see from the little shot on the left, the beach is just completely littered with pieces of ice. And so trying to isolate a particular one is really difficult, so it doesn't overlap with any others. But if you can manage to find one that doesn't overlap with another, you can create some really interesting photographs. And so we were going back to your Carlson the day after, because we wanted to visit again because it was so amazing the first day, but the weather was nowhere near as good. On the way there, the wind picked up, and you can see from this video that the wind was blowing the snow across the road, and it was really quite scary. Now, a little bit later on the way back, it was even worse. And so I'll show you that in a second. I'm glad this time that my videos are working for some reason. In the last live stream, my videos didn't work, but today they are. But the second day was, once we got there, the skies cleared and we got some more brilliant conditions for taking shots. The image on the right was a little bit manipulated, but only from the point of view that I walked out into the water and just placed those pieces of ice. They're very small, really. They're just very close to the camera. And so I arranged the two pieces of ice to make a nice pattern and marry with the little bit of rock that's sticking out, just to make an attractive composition in the front of the frame. On the second day, I got this shot of Diamond Beach, and this piece of ice was about 10 foot tall, nearly a good 2 meters nearly. It was massive, and I put a different lens on, which was a really... I'd got a long lens at the time, and one of the other guys that I was with suggested changing the lens to get a wide angle. The problem was it was very windy, and with all of the black sand that was floating about, I was really very nervous. So I got one of my friends to cover myself and the camera with their coat, and I tried to do it underneath, just about managed. But the lens that I used is still, I need to get it sorted. It's still a little bit gritty from the sand that was in the beach. I didn't manage to get any inside the camera though, thankfully. But on the way back, the conditions seemed even worse. We had a pretty much total whiteout. And so you can see this video here on how bad the road was. On the way back, you could barely see, at some points, not much more than 5 to 10 meters in front of you. You can see here just how bad it was, and it was one of the most scary times I've had in a car, because not only were the conditions so violently windy, and there were cars on the other side. At one point as well, an ambulance came past us, and you'll see that in a second, because there'd been a traffic accident further along the road, and you can see it's the conditions here are just so scary. We were the guy that was driving. This must have gone on for about 45 minutes, or it felt like that. It probably wasn't that long in reality, but it felt so long and so scary. Now you can probably just hear, if you're getting the soundtrack, the ambulance coming now, and the ambulance came past us at such a rate of knots. Like, you see how quickly compared with how we're going, and driving blindly, obviously must be used to it. And we then it didn't look like it was anything very serious when we got there, but still fairly scary. So once we got past this snow, I'll thank you for that comment, Trash Panda. Once we got past that bit of a plain, the skies cleared again, and we saw another foot of a glacier further along the road. And the picture on the right is me literally leaning with my full weight against the wind. I'm not. That's nothing put on at all. I am literally leant against the wind. It was so strong that I could do that without falling over. It just gives you an indication about how powerful the wind was at the time. That night, I got my first view of the Northern Lights. Now, it's not the most spectacular shot, because it was literally right outside the back of the guest house that we were staying in. I hadn't really, I don't know whether I even took the tripod out, but I certainly hadn't focused very well, because you can see how blurry the stars are. But I particularly like this one, because just as I was taking the long exposure, so thinking about it, I must have been on the tripod. A car must have started or reversed in, and so we've got the brake lights from the car creating this red light across the foreground, which is quite interesting. Not the best picture, I know, but it was my first view of the Northern Lights. So then on day 5, we set off back through Vic, and then further along. No, we didn't. We went back towards Reykjavik. We went the other way. We were going back, I think, to the South Iceland guest. We were going back from where we'd just been. And so we would have travelled through Vic again. So we were going back towards Reykjavik. Because we'd got, at this point, some waterfalls that we wanted to find, and another glacier. And so we got to the South Iceland guest house. And this is one of the waterfalls that we were particularly looking for. This is called Skogafoss, and it's very difficult to get a scale, which is why I've included this tourist that was stood looking at it. And even that doesn't really do it justice about how big it is. I've not got the actual picture. I might come later. But this particular waterfall was used in one of the Game of Thrones episodes, if you're a particular fan of that. Now, it was enhanced. If you remember the shot where Dany and Jon Snow land with the dragons in front of a waterfall, this was where they landed, but there was several waterfalls that had been superimposed behind it just to make it look even more spectacular. But just in front of this was sheet ice. So walking across to get to the bottom was quite tricky. It's a good job we'd got spikes on our boots like these. And these were a godsend, because it allowed us to walk across the ice without being in too much danger. if you're going on this kind of expedition, or even in cold weather in this country, on your own country, I would definitely suggest getting a pair of these. They're only about 10 to 15 pounds, or however much that is in dollars. Really, really useful bit of kit to just put onto any existing shoes, and they saved us no end of problem. But we went to look for a waterfall called Cavernifoss. And there were some coaches that were driving down a road, and we thought, oh, that looks promising, we'll follow those. Turns out we didn't find the waterfall that we wanted, but instead we found this, which was another glacier that was just breathtaking, because in front of it was a lake that was frozen, and it's virtually impossible from this photograph to get an idea about scale. On the top of the glacier, there are some little specks, and some of those specks are people. Unfortunately, I haven't really got a way of pointing them out, but it's a massive thing, and that's the thing about photography. It's unless you will not get the same amount of impression from this photograph that I got from standing there, and that's always the case in photography, that your photographs just will not do justice to what you actually see. There's one of the guys that we were with, and there's some more pictures of the lake. Now, on this particular slide, if you look at the bottom left hand corner, what I'll do is I'll just make it even bigger for you. In the bottom left hand corner, there is the end of the glacier, and if you look on the very top, there is a little red speck, and that is the people that were walking on the top, which gives you a fairly good idea of scale. And if you can compare that to the little insert above it, where there's a picture of the person, go above his head, and that's what you can see underneath. And so that helps to give you some kind of idea about scale. It was just unbelievable. And we walked around the outside of the lake to get to the end of the glacier. We then ended up walking on the ice because we didn't want to at first, but it was completely safe to walk upon. But we tended to stay off it as much as possible, just in case. You don't want to fall into a frozen lake in the middle of Iceland. But it was, again, one of those amazing moments that happened by accident. If you are sitting watching, then do me a really big favor. Leave me a comment so I know you're there. Say hi, and I can say hi back. Or if you have any questions, I haven't forgotten the question about the attracting birds. That's from Yale. That's still there. But do get in touch. Let me know in the chat if you're there, so I can say hello to you. But otherwise, I'll carry on. Now, just let me make that a little bit smaller so I'm back on the screen. So next, where are we going to? On the way back from that glacier, we drove past Skogafoss again, and we went there initially in the morning, and the sun was in a completely different place. But as we came past it again, the sun was going down the valley towards the waterfall, and we decided to have another little visit of it. And you can see here that a rainbow had appeared from all of the spray that was being kicked up by the waterfall, and the sun going down the valley. We got this amazing waterfall as well, with this amazing rainbow. And that is, again, completely natural. That is what we saw. And this is the image that I was thinking about earlier on. Just on the left-hand side, there is a picture that really does give an idea of scale. My friend there has got a similar shot with me standing at the foot of it, but we had a walk right to the foot of the waterfall, I took the shot of this one, and then I did the same for him, just to give a really good idea of the scale, because the shot on the right, again, really doesn't show you the scale. Hi there, Rich in Derbyshire. Nice to have you watching. So let's move on. Day 6. We went a little bit around the cliffs around a place called Vic. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce this one. Oh, no, I'm not, because I'll make a complete mess of it. Hi, Everett. This is another one of my favourite shots from the week. Just outside the door where I'm streaming from now, this picture is on the wall on the landing above the stairs. I just love its simplicity and its colours. The way that just picked out that lone house. This was taken from the top of an outcrop that was at the end of one of the beaches that goes round towards Vic. And I'll admit there is a little bit of photoshopery gone on this. I've removed a few outbuildings and a telegraph pole or two, but mostly this is how it came out of the camera. I've just cleaned it up ever so slightly just to make it a little bit crisper, but the colours and the shadows and the light is how it was. I just really love that picture. Then what we did is we drove back towards the other side of the pinnacles that I showed you in a previous shot. And on the way, we came across this church. There's lots of these styles of churches all across Iceland. And we just love the way that it was framed by this massive mountain there in the background. And I've got probably the best part of 50 shots from this, up close and farther away and from slightly different angles. But I think this was one of my favourites. I just like the way that it's composed and just really attractive. I think I've got that one printed in the bedroom, to be fair. And then as we came past that church, on the picture on the right, that big cliff behind, if you follow that to the left, that is where the church actually is. But it leads to these pinnacles that the opposite side of the outcrop from the town of Vic. And this beach here that we're looking down towards the pinnacle on the left-hand side is a good 2 to 3 miles long. There's no way of getting that idea of scale from this photograph at all, but it's a massive beach, really long, and it sweeps around to those pinnacles of rock. Now, while we were there on this beach at the end, it did snow, but only very lightly, so it didn't really do us any disservice. And we decided we were going to go and visit Vic, which was again to go over the top of that outcrop, which is now on the right-hand side of this this picture. But as we went over the top of the hill, the snow really started, and we thought we were going to get stuck. So we carried on driving once we got through Vic, and the sun was starting to set. But we did then just turn off the road onto a beach that we found, and we got these pictures just here of the sand dunes. And because it was a not really very visited beach and the snow was very recent, there was no footprints, there were no tire tracks, it was all pristine, and you get these lovely patterns in the snow and the sand, and it was just quite an amazing place to watch a sunset. And that evening, we'd sat up and we'd had a little bit to drink, as you do, and I'd turned into bed at about 11 or past. And just before I got into bed, I looked out the window and I noticed in the sky that there were some faint colours. Now, if you've ever seen the Northern Lights, most of the time they're not really visible like you see them in photographs. But I could tell there was something there. And so I got my camera and I set it up and took a slightly longer exposure, and there was some really good colours. Thanks, Steve. I'm glad you're liking the photographs. But there was some colours starting to appear in the sky. So I rushed out to the other guys that were still up and I said, we need to get out. There's something happening in the sky. Now, unfortunately, where the guest house wasn't the most spectacular for foreground. Ideally, we could have done with driving back to Skogafoss and using the waterfall as foreground, but it was late at night and we weren't really prepared for it. But we did manage to get this. Now, I'd prepared a lot better for this because I'd learnt from my mistake from the previous night. So the stars are sharper, I'd focused better, I'd got a better technique. And I think this was probably about a 15 to 20 second exposure to pick up the colours here in the Northern Lights. Now, unfortunately, it's not the most spectacular shot because of the foreground. If I'd have got something a bit more interesting in front, it would have been a lot more spectacular. But for me, it's a really good record of these Northern Lights, because everybody says about Northern Lights when you go to Iceland, and this is the thing that you take away as a really strong memory. I did once hear a judge say to somebody about a picture of the Northern Lights, well, it's just a landscape with some green light. And unfortunately, that's what it is. If it was something really more spectacular, like Skogafoss, or a more interesting landscape, then it could have really, really been a great photograph. But I'm still pleased with it because it just records that I've actually seen them. So the next day, we set off again to have a hunt for the missing waterfall that we tried to find on the previous day. And we had looked on the map to try and find to know where we were going to know what we were going to actually, to be sure that we would actually find it. I can't talk. And we had spied this second church that we wanted to go and try and photograph. But unfortunately, when we got there, it was really difficult to isolate it from the background. And the shot on the left was about the best one that I got. There was just to the right some, I think, a digger or some kind of machinery. And to the left, there was another building that was... So there was only this one angle that was any use. But then when I spun around, the view that I got was this shot on the right. Now, if you're at all familiar with the channel, you will recognize this photograph because it's my banner on the top of the YouTube channel. I use it as a background here in this live stream, and I just really like this picture. Some people will hate it. They'll say there's far too much sky. But I like the fact that there is sky. And again, if you're familiar with the channel, you'll be aware that my motto is just to enjoy your photography and ignore what somebody else thinks. If it's something that you like, then that is the most important thing. Photography is all about taking photographs for your enjoyment. Now, this particular shot is going to mean more to me because I was stood there at the time. Now, if somebody else likes it, that is a bonus. But not only do I like this composition, I like the way that the mountain is dwarfed by the expanse of the sky. So I think it's giving a kind of message about the expanse of nature. But even if you ignore all of that, for me, it's just a really good memory of this moment. And I don't know whether you can tell, but on the right-hand side, there is a huge flock of birds that was flying over, and it goes from the very top of the picture right down into the distance, just adding a little bit more interest. And that one's a bit special for me. That's printed again in a frame down in our living room. So I've got lots of images of Iceland around our house. But because we'd planned a little bit better, we did know where this waterfall was that we were trying to find. It was a place called Cavernafoss, and you can see it down the valley, and there is a narrow path to get to it, to get to the valley. But the reason why we wanted to go to this particular waterfall is because you can get all the way around the back and look down the valley from behind the waterfall. And that's really what we wanted to try and do. Now, unfortunately, when we got to the waterfall, obviously because it was February, everywhere that had been touched by water was sheet ice. And so this is what it actually looked like from behind the waterfall. But the ground here was just covered with ice. And we were faced with the conundrum: do we trust our spikes to get us over this and risk injury or worse? And our photographic impulses took over, and we decided to risk the ice for the possibility of the photograph. And I think in the end it was worth it. But you can see just the power of the water and just how precarious it was getting there. The path basically became sheet ice, and so without spikes we would have been completely stuck. And then after we'd done that, we'd got a final trip back to Reykjavik for the last day, and that is the end of my little talk about Iceland. Now, if you do Trash Banda, that is where the picture comes from, and that is why I use it. If you've got any questions at all about Iceland, then do let me know. I'll try and answer them as much as possible. It was an amazing trip, and I definitely want to go back there again. But it was that trip to Iceland that gave me the get up and go to start the YouTube channel. When I got back, that is what made me think I need to get out with my camera more, and starting the YouTube channel was the way that got me out with the camera again. So this trip to Iceland is what made that happen. If you have just joined the stream and are sat watching but haven't left a comment, then do that. Let me know that you're there. Say hello, and I can just mention you. We've got probably about 10 more minutes left of the stream, but just for now, there was a question that came in from Yel. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Sorry if I'm not. But did ask a question about how do you attract as many possible bird species to your garden? Now, you might have seen from my recent video where I did a bird count, how many birds can I count in 3 days or take photographs of, that on the first day I got nearly 20 different species in one sitting in my shed in the garden. Really, the way to do that is twofold, really. One is to be lucky enough to be in a good location. I'm lucky because I live out in the countryside, next to farmland and woodland, so I get a lot of different species that feel comfortable. Right next to where I've got the bird feeders is a hedge, so they are placed in a way that make the birds feel safe. That's quite important. If you put the bird feeders out in the middle of nowhere, the birds are not going to feel secure when they come to the feeders. So giving them a chance to hide in a hedge, hop over to the feeder, and then get back into the hedge makes them feel more secure, so they don't feel under threat from predators. But then secondly, it's important to put out as wide a variety of food as possible as well, because different birds prefer different kinds of food. Now, at the moment, I'm using sunflower hearts, and that's in a hanging feeder. Lots of bird species like that. At the moment, I've got a squirrel cage around it, because not only do birds like it, but squirrels really like it. But that's very good for attracting birds. It's difficult to get hold of at the moment. It's almost doubled in price because of recent events. But it's really useful to have. Now, at the moment, I'm struggling as well because the feeder that I use, the squirrels have found out how to unscrew the feeder and get at the food, so I'm having to try and make it a lot tighter. Hi Len, Len's watching from Plymouth. Hope you're enjoying the stream. We've got about 10 more minutes, so if you have any questions, don't forget to let me know. So also I've got Niger seed, that's in a hanging feeder, and we get a lot of goldfinch and other finches. They really like that. Then I've got a mixed seed that I put on a table and on a ground feeder as well, just to give some variety. We get wood pigeon, dunnocks, collared doves, lots of birds like that. We're a little bit infested at the moment with jackdaws just down in the wood near to where I live. I was sat the other day and counted the best part of 150 jackdaws, and some of those end up in our back garden, so we're a bit infested with those at the moment. And then finally, I use some suet pellets as well, and you might have seen on previous videos how I push those into holes that I've drilled into tree trunks, and we get woodpeckers and blue tits that come and eat those out of the tree stumps. Now, those aren't the only types of food that you can put out. There's certain types of kitchen scraps or peanuts. If you do use peanuts, then I would say make sure it's in a wire mesh cage and don't put them out whole peanuts where the birds can take them whole, because then there's a risk of them choking. And also, people think that bread is very good for birds. It really isn't actually, so try and avoid anything like that. But have a look around and try and think which type of species that you want to attract, and use the biggest variety of food that will do that for the type of species that you want to attract. We've got Vic watching from Nottingham. Hi Vic. And I've already mentioned Len from Plymouth. So what I will say, we're coming towards the end of this stream. I hope you've enjoyed my little talk about Iceland. I hope that's been interesting to see some of my photographs. There's still a few minutes. If you've got any questions you want to ask, just to fire those there into the chat, and I'll try and answer them before the stream ends. Hopefully, what's going to happen in the next few weeks, I've got a few videos that I've planned to release, but we're going away, hopefully, all being well, if the airports are free and easy and we do manage to get out of the country. We're going away to Italy, and I have got some plans to try and take a few videos, if I'm allowed, while we're away in Italy. So you can look forward to those sometime in August. I've got a few ideas of things that I want to do, and that'll be a little bit different there for the channel. Hope, yeah, you're welcome, Yael. I hope that was useful to you. So I've also, while we're away, I'm gonna be releasing bloopers number 6 as well. So I know some people really like the bloopers. There was one that was in a recent video where a fence collapsed under me. That will be part of the bloopers special, so stay tuned for that. I hope that you look forward to those. Really, unless anybody else has got any further questions, I'll just give it a couple more minutes to see if anything else comes in. But I think we're getting towards the end of today's stream. So thanks very much for watching. If you're watching this later on and not during the live stream, then I hope you've enjoyed that too. Hopefully this one has been a little bit smoother. I don't think that I'm going to have to go away and do any editing of today's live stream, which is going to be save me some time. But thanks for watching in the live stream. And if you're watching again after the event, again, thanks very much for watching. What I would like to say is don't forget about my Teespring store. That really helps the channel if you go and support me by visiting there. I've got lots of new merchandise over in my Teespring store, like the t-shirt that I'm wearing now. I'll just show you again, which is keep calm and enjoy your photography. But there are lots of new designs over there in the Teespring store. But of course, you don't have to spend any money at all to support the channel. You can do that by just clicking like, subscribe, and the bell notifications. Thanks, Trash Panda. I'm glad that you enjoyed my video on phone photography. And that just came about because of the picture that I saw from my father-in-law, as I said in the video. So I'm glad that was useful to you. But watch out for all of those things that are coming up in the future. Next week, oh, I've just got a comment come in from James. I've never been to Denmark, but I would really love to visit those Scandinavian countries. We had a talk from somebody that had been taking pictures of bears, and I think it was in Finland. I'm not quite sure, but all of those kind of countries really do appeal to me because of the scenery and how beautiful it is. But it's certainly on the list. But as I was just saying, thanks so much for watching. Watch out for all those things I've mentioned that are coming up in the future. But all that's left now is to say, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.